Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the interview room. Let's see where you're at around this amazing world. Please chime in. Columbus, Ohio, South Carolina, Randy, Alabama, Virginia, Judy, Maine, Indiana, Jersey Shore, Rocco, good to see you, bud. Sedona, Arizona, Iowa, Massachusetts, Finland is in the house, Toledo, Kentucky, Myrtle Beach, UK, our friends in the UK. Thank you so much for being here. East Palestine, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Honolulu, aloha, and mahalo, Scotland, upstate New York, South Florida's in the house, California, and West Palm Beach, Charleston, South Carolina. We used to live in Mount Pleasant. Beautiful, beautiful part of the country. Elk City, Oklahoma, Spring Hill, Tennessee. There's Jamie. Woohoo! It's good to see everybody. Washington State, Orlando, Florida, McKinney, Texas. Hey, hey, Jamie. Give it a couple more seconds here for a couple of more of our friends to get in. Central Massachusetts, Antarctica. Holy cow. Man, oh man, I bet you it's cool up there. Parker, Colorado. And Berkeley. We used to call that Berkeley. I don't know how you call it anymore. Germany. And our friends in Canada. Welcome, 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 everybody. Greeley, Colorado. And man, oh man, it's so exciting to have you guys all here this afternoon. But at the same time, this is quite a sad situation that we're going to talk about here with 20-year-old James Gracey. And of course, we have all heard the news. Unfortunately, it appears that his body has been discovered not far from the reported area where he was last seen. And so I thought it would be a really good reminder for not only our college-age students, you know, being the father, and Karen and I being the parents of three boys, one who is right now in college, and then, of course, you know, the picture here of our boys behind me. You know, this case just emphasizes, for me anyway, you know, the reality of how fast and how quickly life can change. And our heart goes out to these parents, the Graceys, who right now are in this place of total confusion, total denial, total anger, total disconnect with reality. And as you guys know, Karen and I come from a place of authenticity in relationship to that, having lost a son at 20 years old in 2003, September 3rd, 2003. And that was a day that will never, ever move from our life. And so now, unfortunately, the information that we initially had, which I was hopeful would not be detrimental, is that James from Elmhurst, Illinois, was last seen around 3 o'clock in the morning on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, after visiting the waterfront Shôko restaurant. It's a nightclub in Barcelona, Spain. And according to his mother at that time, Teresa, said her son was with friends, but they got separated at the end of the night. We're going to talk a little bit about that and why that buddy system, especially when you're visiting a foreign country, why that buddy system is so important. So a couple of his friends, this Kevin McLay, the president of Alabama's fraternity and a friend of Gracey's, said he made the trip to Spain, and he told Fox News Digital that he's the chapter chaplain and philanthropy chairman and is known for mentoring younger brothers and giving back to others. It's just horrible to see a kid with such potential and such gifts to be taking so young. And the police in Barcelona at the time, they reported that they had discovered his phone. And I thought this was pretty interesting during the arrest of another individual. So the authorities at this point have not released how that came to be. And that's why I thought it would be important today to talk not only about, the importance, like I said, of the buddy system for our kids, but also the importance of what roles alcohol plays sometimes in situations like this. But then simultaneously, I want to share with you two cases that I worked, and that one of them sounded like it was an obvious situation where a young man had fallen off of a pier into the Pacific Ocean. And then the second one was a young man who allegedly went fishing. Neither of them returned. And in this situation, this young man goes to this lounge and club in Barcelona. You can tell it's a spring break crowd. Looks like a little older crowd, quite frankly, looking at the pictures here. And these are from Fox News and the New York Post. So if we just take a look at what we would call situational awareness in an environment, and if we see up on the upper left-hand corner there underneath the street light, there is a camera on that building. So they have a tremendous video surveillance system, it sounds like. And that video surveillance system is going to tell them the story. Part of what was reported is that he had left this club with an unknown individual, and then, of course, his phone shows up with an unknown individual who the authority said they had taken into custody. And at that point, then that's when the investigation really started to kick in here, right? Common sense. I'm trying to get my screen to change. Sorry. So the good news is there is a tremendous amount of what appears to be video surveillance. And the authorities have not released yet whether it was a male or a female that he left that club with. However, they have announced that they did make an arrest, which is extremely positive for the totality of this investigation. So this is the beach area where this young man was hanging out with his friends, and the buddy system has been proven to work. But in this situation where you're in a foreign country, you can never, ever lose sight of your friend. And we have had nieces and nephews who have traveled overseas during various, type of college experiences, to get a chance to study overseas, et cetera. And the counsel's always been, do not ever separate from one another. And so you can see the beach here. And if you're just joining us, the authorities have related that they have found what they're reporting as his body, James. And they launched a intensified search, probably after reviewing the video. And in that case, the situation turns into a full-on recovery effort. But two anomalies that I immediately thought that stuck out. Number one, the media had reported that his wallet was found floating, which I thought was kind of interesting. What about you guys? Number one, was there anything in it? And then the second anomaly or suspicious activity, I thought, was they said they made an arrest after tracking down his phone. And if that is the truth, then we do have to go with, okay, what are the criminality elements in that area in front of this club? Obviously, in Spain and Europe, there are a tremendous amount of pickpockets. There are a tremendous amount of individuals that would take advantage of somebody who's intoxicated. And I'm going to talk about two cases that I worked, obviously, being in a community that had we had many miles of beaches. And so I worked many cases where individuals ended up in the Pacific Ocean. And so it's going to be interesting to find out if, in fact, it looks like they discovered him in the Inner Canal, which is not the actual Mediterranean at that point, but it is attached, obviously, because the water flows to the Mediterranean. But you can see this boat here with the two, docks on either side. It looks like they found him in that area because that's the area they were looking for. And so that means they probably had some type of surveillance system. Now, this is going to be the bigger question. Who did he have with him, number one, if in fact it is shown and I'm sure we'll see it at some point, if in fact he's shown to be leaving that club with somebody, they're going to have to identify that person if they haven't already. I'm sure they have. And then they're going to have some very intense conversations about connecting the surveillance video with the type of statements that they're going to obtain. The reason for that, it's extremely critical in these types of cases where either accident and or foul play could both be true at the same time. If, in fact, let's say a pickpocket takes him out of the facility, gets his wallet, and now he's outside, out of the control of the environment with his friends, et cetera, in the club, does he walk over and accidentally fall into that water source? Maybe we can speculate, we don't know, but then that other person separates after obtaining the wallet. And these are all questions that are going to have to be answered. And they're going to have to see not only if he fell into that water accidentally by himself and separated from the person allegedly that left with him, or is that person with him and witnesses him falling into the water? Because the anomaly in this particular case is the obvious wallet separated from his person. The parents are going to want to know and find out what's in his wallet when they get his remains. Now, the Cold Case Foundation, we worked a case out of, believe it or not, the Soviet Union, Russia. We were brought in by the State Department to do an assessment on a young man that was found around a tree, at the base of a tree in the snow. And we were asked whether or not it was foul play because he last had contact with some authorities at that time. I can't give you the results of that because obviously it's confidential to the family. However, in this situation where if this is in fact James, which all indications are it could be, the question's going to be, at what point did that individual separate from him? Basically, and if he was intoxicated, they're going to know that through, obviously, when the toxicology results come back. At what point is he left on his own? And is that an overt act and maybe a conspiracy act to take him out of the club, intoxicated, to rob him with the intent to rob? And then at some point when they separate, the person who ever had the wallet now discards it, and it's found floating in the river. I think it's really weird that his wallet is even out of off of his person. And the reason I say that is I want to bring to your attention a couple of cases that I investigated. This is one of them here, and this young man was Jose Carbajal. And what this young man did, he was, very young, 21 years old, and he had made a bet that he could jump off the pier for $20 with all of his friends, and he was very intoxicated. Almost a similar situation. Obviously, there's not a nightclub involved, but there was this idea that said, hey, I'm intoxicated, et cetera, and his friends just let him jump. Okay. And in this environment here, there are so many what ifs in this crowd, and the fact that you have a U.S. citizen, and now you also have the separation of his wallet from his body, the FBI is going to get involved in this. You can bet dimes to donuts. And there's going to be a tremendous scrutiny around the video surveillance evidence that they have. And the point's going to be, when did that individual, if in fact he did leave that facility, this nightclub, with that secondary individual, when did they separate? Because if you think about something like this, where somebody says, hey, $20, I'll jump, and he jumps. Well, what we did is we went to the Scripps Oceanography, and by the way, the parents can do this as well. They keep records on all the tide systems around the world. And unfortunately, what happens to the body immediately almost, once the body takes intake of water, the body sinks. And in this case, Jose jumped, he got caught in the tides, and he disappeared, and his friends saw him disappear. So about 10 days later, I'm not talking about Jimmy. No, I'm talking about this case that I worked where somebody is around water. And actually, I got two cases that I'm going to bring to your attention here. So we had gone to the Scripps Oceanography there in La Jolla and asked the scientists there, can you give us an outline on what the current conditions were and where somebody would have floated up when the body expands? Because what happens after about 10 days is the body expands and the body is then brought to the surface. And that's what happened. 10 days later, the body surfaces south of us near a power plant, which they used to call the warm water jetty in Southern California, in Carlsbad, California. So this is an obvious situation where somebody says, hey, $20, I'm going to jump off the pier. Cut and dry, allegedly. His tox was extremely high. And then simultaneously, just before he is found, there's another situation that occurs where a second body had floated up in the harbor, in the Oceanside Harbor. And the question was, is this kid, Carbajal, who jumped off the pier? That answer was no. This is now a second individual within 10 days of one another. And what happened in this case is this young man appears in floating, and there's a jet skier that discovers him who calls the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard get him, recover him. And initially, this young man is 24 years old. His name is Daniel Scott Tower. And I got called out on this, and the initial perception was there was no evidence of any foul play. Now, where am I going with this, and why am I connecting this to this case? Because I've had cases exactly like James's case here. And in the second case, the first one was pretty obvious. he jumped off the pier. We had witnesses. We recovered him. But the second one all of a sudden appeared, tower, and at first it appeared there was nothing suspicious about that case, that it potentially could have been an accidental drowning. However, I then found his car. And on his car were numerous parking tickets. And they dated back weeks before his body was recovered. And so after we attended the autopsy, we put this information out to the public because in the autopsy, it appeared that there may have been foul play based upon some of the injuries to the victim. So in this case, now I had a situation that was now quickly turning from this, there was no evidence of foul play, to this. We're seeking information about his car, and my partner and I at that time, Dan Aarons, were looking for any type of witness, any witnesses that actually saw him getting in or out of that car. So this young man, he had returned from a nightclub. He was a bartender at a club called Schroeder's. And he had gone down to the harbor to allegedly go fishing. However, he never returned back to his car. And so there's going to be those types of questions that are going to be raised in James's case. Okay. The first question is going to be, how did he get there? And obviously he doesn't have his car. He's there visiting, but he got there with his friends. They stayed in that club together, the buddy system. And they ended up, hanging out for the evening. And at some point, though, it's reported, and this is going to be critical for the flow of this investigation, that he left with somebody. And now the anomalies, the elephant in the room, is going to be the wallet, in my opinion, floating. Because that item needs to be on the victim. And in the first case here, Carbajal, this one, his wallet was on him. And in this case, Scott Tower, Daniel, his wallet was on him. And so wallets just don't separate from the clothing if they're in their pockets. And I can assure you, when these kids are probably very akamai, at least pays attention, and they realize that their identity in a foreign country, having some type of identity is crucial. So my partner and I, Danny, we end up working this case, and we end up discovering there was a gentleman who had a little dinghy boat. And he was across from where this kid here was fishing. And he was putting gasoline in this dinghy. And he came across over to the pier where Daniel was fishing and said, "Hey, do you want to go out where the bigger fish are? I'd like to have you come with me." And of course, Daniel says, "Sure, I'll go with you." Now, this is where you look at the victim risk continuum. In James's case, is that a high risk or a low risk environment? I think we can all agree, right? You guys tell me in the chat what you think. This is well, I'll wait for a couple answers to come in. You guys tell me what you think. High or low risk environment? 3 o'clock in the morning, alcohol's involved, by the water, hundreds of people. Okay. That's a very high risk situation. Very high risk. Okay. Evident the fact that once he's out of that club, his risk even goes higher. Look at the environment, situation, and circumstance. A low risk is Nancy Guthrie in her house, sound asleep. A higher risk is in a club environment. And then when you separate from that club environment at 3 o'clock in the morning in a foreign country, that is an extremely high risk environment. It may feel low risk, but if you add alcohol, you add criminals, unknown, pickpockets, and the list goes on, now it becomes extremely high risk. And in this situation, it was kind of a medium risk because he's kind of, hey, yeah, sure, I'll get in. And anyway, he gets on the boat and he disappears, never to be seen again. Danny and I identify the suspect, and we, over a course of months, interview a guy named Mark Gracey. And Mark tells us that, hey, yeah, I knew the kid was a bartender. I knew he goes to these clubs. And you know what? I just saw him there and decided to see if he wanted to go out and go, fishing with me. Nothing to see here, no big deal. And when I got him out there, for some reason, he started drinking pretty heavily of the alcohol that I had on my boat. And next thing I know, he comes at me with a fishing gaff that I had on the boat. And you're not going to believe this, detectives, but he just jumps overboard. And that's the last I saw of him. So over months of interviewing, and this is where I'm going with James's case, this is the type of case that you don't take initially as face value. I guess that's where I'm going here. At face value, the video may show him coming out, and if there's a second person there, that second person raises the elevation of that risk to James. Whether that individual says, hey, I pulled up, he wanted to go fishing, not in James's case, in Tower's case. Hey, he wanted to go fishing, he got in my boat, Boom. We went out fishing. And now the suspect flips that conversation into, hey, he got really intoxicated with alcohol that I had on my boat, and he came after me. In this situation, the fact that there was somebody with his telephone, potentially, according to the authorities, and the fact that they said his wallet was floating, those two items are separated from his person. Now, could that be a situation where he says, here, hold this, I'm going swimming? Absolutely, could be in play. Is it a separation situation where he's intoxicated to the point where he doesn't even realize items are being removed from his person? The answer is yes. Okay? The answer is yes. And that's going to be the point where if the suspects get what they want and then they leave him, they are now culpable if something happens to him after the initial crime. So one of the things to think about, if in fact he was a victim of maybe a robbery, maybe a pickpocket, maybe something to that effect, this case could get interesting. Because even though they left him and he accidentally goes down the pier and falls in the water, okay, that could be problematic. Because in this situation, we were able to lock the suspect in. And if you're just joining me, I'm correlating a case, two cases that I worked that were very similar to James's case that we're learning about today. And in this situation, I was able to lock in, Danny and I were able to lock him into so many different stories, and the minutia details kept changing and changing and changing, that it turned into a situation where it was obvious he'd been lying. And so we impounded his boat, got proof that Daniel was inside that boat, and the individual fled to Florida. And we were able to get him in Fort Lauderdale after a couple of months. And later on, we talked to the family at the time. Now, mind you, this looked like a very nonchalant, not very suspicious situation at all. But it turns out that he was robbed while in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And the tides took him into the harbor. But the story was he was only getting in the boat to go fishing, which raises the question, right? What did the suspect say who allegedly left with him? And that statement needs to be really viewed very carefully, evident of the fact that his wallet was separated from his person. Because if in fact they do have, him leaving with that guy at 3:00 in the morning and other property is missing, then you have the intent to commit robbery, and now you have a death as a result of that. So you could have a second. I don't know what what in Barcelona, I don't know what the rules are there in terms of, what the charging statutes are, but we had a situation just like that. And the family was praying that they would get justice. And lo and behold, they did get justice after 7 years. He was taken to trial 7 years later, and it took us almost a year to put this case together. And ultimately, he was convicted for killing Daniel. So where am I going with this for the family, if you're listening? Take your time, be patient, but be persistent with the authorities. By the way, that picture on the right, that's a recent photograph of him. He collapsed in the courtroom when he was convicted, and he was sentenced to 15 years. And this photograph is he's out of prison now, living in Florida again. And the interesting thing about this is a booking photo most recently where he beat almost to death a senior citizen. So a leopard does not lose its spots, does it? And so in this situation for James, I would please tell the family that stay with persistence. Stay with the persistence for your son. And if I can help, reach out. I've done these cases. Our team has done these cases. And we can help you maintain that persistence. All right. What say you in the chat? Let me answer a couple of points that have been put up. And thank you so much, Cheryl. Appreciate you. Mystic Sky, welcome. Hello from Wisconsin. It's got to be cold up there. Happy to be part. Thank you, Ginger. We appreciate you. All right, let's see here. The family are there. Perfect. Yes, always. We always travel with somebody. Yeah, this is almost like a Natalie Holloway situation, right? Where you're in a foreign country. She was 18 years old, obviously from Alabama, when she vanished. Obviously, for her, it was a situation that took a unbelievable turn. Again, hers was SA motivated by Vandersloot. And in this, I think with James's case, I don't think SA is going to play a role here. However, it will, the alcohol will play a role. And so his toxicology is going to be important. Now, this is also a really great statement. What are the chances he was lured by a female? That's a setup, right? Again, that's a setup for criminal activity. And if in fact that she's part of a crew, a pickpocketing crew, for an example, we know in Europe, pickpockets, especially in Spain, and other countries. In Europe today, they work in crews where there's a blocker, there's somebody that comes up behind, there's somebody in the front, there's somebody to the side, and boom. And they work the clubs. And they do work the clubs. And so if there is a female involved and she pulled him out of that club, then that's extremely important to know. And so the authorities, I'm hoping, with this individual that they have in custody, 90% of the time the guy's going to admit to nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why you've detained me. I have nothing to do with this. Yeah, I walked out with the kid, but I left him. Okay. Well, we don't know what the rest of the video is going to show. And if the authorities kind of play it off right away, like the initial, point that I was making earlier, where when Tower was in the, let me show you this. This one here, these were the news articles that I pulled up. It says, when he floated up in the harbor, unfortunately, look what our police spokesman was saying at the time. There's no evidence of any foul play. Well, we just saw the exact same quote. This appears to be an accident. There's no evidence of criminal activity from the authorities in Spain right now. So, and I'm not saying that's not going to be the case. Okay. I'm saying you cannot take a chance and not stay with it. Does that make sense? Because if you stay with it and you question the question, you end up hooking up somebody like this. And that somebody actually killed that individual that initially the pretext was there's nothing here to see. Okay. It's an accident. Now, some of these are very obvious. In today's world, you have, like I said, they have a tremendous amount of video. But the question is going to be what happened in the club? What were the observations of his friends? If in fact he was, he's a handsome young man, I'm sure he was communicating with some of the ladies in there. And so you want to kind of figure out, okay, well, who are, these individuals? And this is a great point. Could he have been targeted? And if he is visibly wearing any type of jewelry, watches, that kind of stuff, then these individuals who would, want to hurt you will notice those things right away. Because remember, they don't go to these clubs to party. They go to these clubs with intent to look for a victim. And that's why it's important to tell our kids, if they're going to go overseas, that they cannot in any circumstance, especially in today's world today, separate from one another in any way, shape, or form. Can his family request his body to be extradited to the United States for autopsy, or no, because the crime was committed there? Thank you. Okay, there's two things that can happen. Number one, because his body was in Spain, they have controlled jurisdiction. And so the State Department will get involved and they will transport his body back to the United States for a second autopsy. And the family can request that. Now, here's what the family also needs to know. They need to secure the tissue results and secure the toxicology tubes of maybe his blood and it needs to make sure it's refrigerated, and they need to demand that, and they need to get their own testing on that as well, because his drinks could have been spiked in various different ways, just like you girls out there, you women out there, if you go into a bar, get one of these covers over your drinks and that you can put your straw through. Okay. Don't ever leave a glass exposed in today's world in any club scenario. Also, do not ever touch any items. If, let's say, you're coming out of a club, let's say there's a zip tie on your door handle, don't touch it. Some of the moves that these criminals are making today is to put fentanyl and stuff like that on notes that are left on your car windshield, on your door handle. So when you grab it and there's a zip tie on it, they basically spike the zip tie. So when you touch it, it transfers to you. This is a whole new track that these individuals are using and doing. Always be aware when you're walking from a supermarket to your car in a shopping parking lot. Make sure that you are paying attention to not only people behind you, but people in front of you, people around your car. Don't open your car until you're almost there. And at any time you feel unsafe, immediately turn around. If you have your phone, take it out, start recording, and start headed back into the supermarket and record anybody around you. It's better safe than sorry. And then once you're inside, have somebody escort you to your vehicle. Don't ever go to your car if you feel uncomfortable. And it's the same thing in clubs with your girlfriends. Do not let anybody leave the club by themselves, ever. Same thing with guys. This is a perfect example. Don't ever let that happen in today's world. Okay? That way we can all enjoy tomorrow. So, in today's world, things are extremely dangerous. Do you know how long alcohol stays in the victim's system after death? I asked to see if blood alcohol levels can be determined during the autopsy to see if James was incapacitated. Well, yeah, it all depends on the volume of the alcohol, obviously, right? And the weight and the density of the individual. But typically 12 to 24 hours, sometimes up to 36 hours. But you will have a saturation level also inside of the blood, of the tissue. In various organs within the body, they can extrapolate those numbers primarily through the liver. And so alcohol, consistently will stay, 12 to 24 hours, depends on your weight, your height, and the amount you consumed. Okay. And you can, once you get those levels, you can pull them, through a blood tox in terms of to get to those levels. And the ME's office will do that. So you want to, the parents in this case, and James's parents need to make sure that they get their own vials. Just don't rely upon what they are going to send out for toxicology. Ask when the body's going to be transported for vials of his blood. And make sure that you send those to an independent lab, because sometimes, even like marijuana, that is a specific test in toxicology. And if they're not requested right away, then the labs won't test for them, because sometimes it becomes a situation of expense. And when you're dealing in a foreign country, you want to make sure that expenses is a non-issue, right? And that's why I would make a recommendation to the family that they get their own blood vials and that they send them off to an independent lab here in the United States. Okay. Now, the other situation is, once they get him back here, to answer that question again about a secondary autopsy, yes, hire somebody that can do a secondary autopsy. I would give a shout out to Dr. Robert Bucks. The guy is amazing. He's out of Colorado. He does a lot of war crime stuff. He's fascinating. Very smart, very competent, and very good. And once you get that secondary autopsy, if there's any discrepancies, immediately then a secondary investigation can kick off. But you want to be on the ground, and I believe his parents were on the ground in Barcelona. And so that is a situation that you want to get the information fresh from not only the eyewitnesses, record the conversations, even if they're in Spanish, record all of those conversations. Don't depend on the authorities to do it. You must do it in a foreign country. Take your own photographs, take your own videos, and then, of course, all of that stuff can be turned over later to other individuals. And like I mentioned, the case that we did out of the Soviet Union, the mother of the victim was an actual, I have to be careful because we're under an NDA. I can talk about this piece of it, but she was an actual surgeon, and she witnessed her own son's autopsy. It was horrific. But she videotaped it. And she had that information when she came back to the States, and her son came back, and she had a second one done. It was horrible. I got to be honest with you. And I mean, I couldn't do that personally. I mean, there's no way. There is no way. But in this situation, she had to do what she had to do as a mama. You know, mama bears, you, they don't let go when they bite. Thank goodness. And, you know, she ended up turning to us, the Cold Case Foundation, and we were able to give them some answers. So in this situation where James's body now, the good news here, everybody, is the fact that they found him so rapidly. The water may not have deteriorated all of the evidence. I think it's going to lean more towards a situation where somebody had that wallet, somebody had his phone, and dimes to donuts is there's got to be some indication of foul play here, even though initially it doesn't appear that way. the separation point from him outside of the bar on video to this person that potentially escorted him out of the bar. I saw and read that, of course, they found his phone and they were digitally able to, see, where the phone was moving, and then ultimately it got that guy with the phone. Okay. That's fine. That's nice. Okay. But in order to get this guy, it took us almost 8 or 9 months by persistently staying with it and staying on him to the point where, his story just wasn't lining up, even though, he was, playing, the good guy. I don't know what you're talking about. The kid came after me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, that wasn't the case. And it all started with me finding, and I'm not patting myself on the back. Don't misunderstand where I'm coming from. But this case started out with, nothing to see here, to my partner and I found his car, and there was a stack of parking tickets on this car. And then we discovered he was due for shoulder surgery like the day after he disappeared. And the suspect said, well, he jumped and he was going to swim into shore. Well, that was impossible. And so what we did is we built the case upon every interview. We went back and forth with this guy. And that may be a situation here where the parents are going to have to go back and forth with the individual who was found with his phone when he escorted him outside of this restaurant and club. I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks, and you only have a week or so to lock this in with these suspects, specifically in a foreign country. So our prayers are with the family here, and I hope they get answers for James, and that those answers are what followed the evidence. And that the authorities will pay as much attention to James as if that was their own son. I am confident that the good things will happen, but you have to stay diligent and on top of it. And so with that, let's keep the family in our prayers. And thank you guys for being here today. By the way, I've got a great program coming on Sunday. The thumbnail will be up, and we're going to talk about motivation in the Nancy Guthrie case. God bless you all. Stay akamai. Remember, stay alert, look around, pay attention. And if you wouldn't mind, please hit that like and subscribe button. We're always grateful. Aloha.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, yeah. Make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No one cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.